Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I'm Joey, and today we're going to talk about what you should do after receiving your brand new handheld. Many people just saw the title and are thinking, what do you mean? I just put the SD card in that came with it. It says 4TB on it, and it's most definitely 4 terabytes and made by the reputable SD card manufacturer called 4TB. Everything works. This person also has a second tab open on Reddit asking why Pokemon doesn't save. And so that's the main reason for this video. Let's see if we can get the common errors and issues most people experience out of the way, and dumb it down a lot to what you need to have a great experience with your new handheld. A lot of questions that I see across every platform is, I just got my device, how do I load ROMs? Or, I just got my device, what's the first thing I should do? So let's see if we can come up with a checklist to help. I'll leave links to a lot of what I talk about today in the description. This might seem counterintuitive, but I'm going to start with the one thing you shouldn't do. I do think every person in this space shouts it from the rooftops, but the number one thing that you shouldn't do, in my opinion, is order the ROM SD card from any of the manufacturers. And second, don't use the included operating system SD card that arrives. I'll explain. The number one reason is that those SD cards are unbranded in most cases, and extremely low quality, so prone to failure. A lot of what the issues that we see across social media is because of this number one reason. The second reason is that in 99% of cases, the actual ROMs that are included have a lot of issues. Notably, for example, not being able to save in-game for Pokemon. It's the easiest one that you'll notice. One look through the different subreddits and you'll see almost daily posts about people's saves not working from using the included ROM set. Do yourself a favor, don't buy the extra SD card and throw away the included SD card when it arrives. It's just best practice and it'll save you a lot of headaches. So what should you use? Personally, I'm partial to both SanDisk and Samsung SD cards. I actually just purchased some not too long ago for some new devices I had coming in, so I'll leave links in the description to the exact ones. But generally a 32 gig is more than enough for a Linux operating system. And depending on your device, I'd go with 128 gigs to as high as you want for ROMs. But 32 gig for operating system and 128 gig for ROMs are great starting points. You can also choose to just use one SD card for both operating system and ROMs, which I don't actually recommend, but more from a best practice standpoint than anything being wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with that setup at all. There's no right or wrong choice here, just personal preference. Just keep in mind the price of an SD card or two SD cards could be around $20, so we're not breaking the bank here in any way. So I told you to throw out the SD cards that came with the device, and now you're freaking out because you can't actually turn the device on or do anything. I get it, it's scary to have to flash your own operating system onto a brand new SD card. You want the device to arrive, turn it on, and have everything working. The good thing is, a lot of what you can do is ahead of time. So what do? Well, first, breathe. It's not difficult at all. For every device, there's a lot of information out there on how to proceed, and a great community behind it. So now it depends on which route you want to go. If it's a Linux-only device, you could flash the stock operating system image from the manufacturer onto an SD card. Using Anbernic, for example, they host it all on their website, and it will load their stock operating system as it would have arrived from the factory, but this time on a good SD card. Then all you have to do is load your ROMs and you're done. This process is super simple as well. Anbernic has the image writer, instructions, and firmware all in one download. And you can also do all of this ahead of time. As long as you can read, you can do this. Connect your SD card to an SD card reader on your PC, follow the steps, and you have the stock operating system now on a good SD card. Alternatively, the community has custom firmware for every device, like ArcOS, OnionOS, or GarlicOS, that you can flash in the exact same way and will have updated emulators, performance settings, and everything you need to get started with great documentation. In both scenarios, the flashing process is almost the exact same. with custom firmware wikis having detailed instructions on how to do it. So it really is just personal preference. But I will say that you'll have a much easier time getting support from Discord, Reddit, or other platforms if you choose a custom firmware. Most hobbyists in this space aren't using the stock operating system, so it's tough for them to help you. Go ahead and try and find information on Anbernic's stock firmware on their website. Oh wait, there's nothing, no documentation or anything to help you. It might take a few more steps to do, like Garlic OS on the RG35XX requires some changes to partitions, but thankfully there's written guides on it as well as videos, like my setup guide. And those can make your life very easy, and you have a support system if things go wrong. So how do you know what custom firmware is available for each device? Well, you can jump onto your device's subreddit or one of the Retro Handhelds discords, like in my description, and into the channel for the device you're curious about. Check the pinned post or the pinned comment, depending on if it's Reddit or Discord, and it'll be a great starting point for you to see, and it's actually a good resource for frequently asked questions as well. The RG353V subreddit, for example, is a good example of this and gives you some good detailed information on the whole setup. But most subreddits are similar to this as well. Now, what if it's an Android-only device, like the Retroid or RG405M or Odin, let's say? It's a bit different scenario. There's no easy custom firmware to flash in most cases that replicates a Linux install. So you're stuck with following a video like my RG405M setup guide for your specific device, or figuring it out yourself, which could be daunting. But also a lot of people have guides on this as well. You could combine Retro Game Core's Android guide and RetroArch guide, as well as his Daigisho guide, just to get everything up and running. That's about an hour's worth of your time in video, but it'll get you to a really good spot. So you do have options here no matter what. So now the big one, ROMs and BIOS. It's a daily question. Where do you find them? How do you download them? Which ones to download? Where do you put them? So many questions. And if you're following along, your device didn't come with a ROM card. So what do? Let's start from the beginning by looking at my screen. Where do you find ROMs and BIOS files? Well, I have to assume you're familiar with search engines like Google, so let's cross that one out. The second thing that I'm going to assume is that you're familiar with Reddit and how subreddits work. So let's cross that one out as well. Lastly, pinned posts or megathreads on subreddits are a great source of information for everything you need. It honestly doesn't get much easier than this. It's 3 clicks and you can search for anything you want, or just go and browse the tabs to find what you need. That's all. That should cover the where, how, and which questions, and being as vague as I can be. To continue being as subtle as I absolutely can be, there's also ROM packs, which are curated lists that people have made that are as easy as downloading a zip file and moving them into the right directories. Or in some cases, like a tiny best set, for example, the ROM directories already match what you need for your device. In 2023, asking where ROMs and BIOS files can be found shouldn't just be a question anymore. That's the easiest part of this whole thing. Be grateful you didn't have to scour GeoCities and AngelFire websites like I had to years ago. So now the next question is going to be, where do you put all of this? And well, that depends. For any Linux operating system, stock, Arc OS, Garlic OS, etc., they will automatically create folders for each platform. Arc OS, for example, has a whole bunch. Game Boy, Game Boy Color, SNES, PSX, N64, and it goes on. On the Arc OS wiki, it also tells you what folders are used for which emulator. Other custom firmware have similar information, it just depends on the setup. All of this information is available on each custom firmware's wiki and is easy to understand. For Android, it's a bit different. Here's the steps that I would do. Pop the ROM SD card in that you want to use and format it within Android. And then just create a ROMs folder on that SD card, and then you can create subfolders for each platform. Names don't really matter, however you want to name them. Then you're going to take your ROM files, which could be in zip form or could be in their native file types, and you're just going to copy and paste them into the folders. And voila, you've loaded ROMs. It's that easy. Now, the last and final question on this is your ROMs aren't showing, and so what went wrong? Well, for Linux operating systems, most require you to restart at this point for them to load, and you should see everything and you're good to go. For Android, you'll have to pop into the front end of the device you're using and just point it to the ROM folder for each platform. They should start syncing right away. It's a bit more cumbersome, but you get the idea. There's obviously a lot more that you can do for all your devices, but this should hopefully get you up to a running point and you can start going and playing games. So let's recap. You've ordered a device without an extra SD card. You've thrown away the SD card that came with it. You've decided on the operating system you want. You flashed your own SD card with the operating system you want. Found your ROM files on the internet and loaded those too, and then made sure the front end could see them so you can play your games. That's all there really is to it. If you're savvy enough to order any of these devices, or even to find my YouTube videos, you're definitely savvy enough to do these steps. And it won't take you nearly as long as you might think to be up and running. And that's going to be it for this one. Hope you liked the video and hope you all have a good one.